And here comes Mack. So Khalil Mack, a couple of years ago, the Defensive Player of the Year, couldn't come to terms with the Raiders. And then in a stunning trade, the Packers were also involved in the negotiations. He moved Graham over to Mack's side. And Mack pushes Graham right into Rodgers, and the pass for Cobb is incomplete to make it 3rd down and 10. 4-man rush. Here it comes. Look out. Down he goes at the 25-yard line. Roy Robertson Harris, number 95, with the sack. They're 4 wide here on 3rd and goal. Again, the pump fake, and this time he will get sacked, lose the ball, and Mack took the ball away. Khalil Mack already paying dividends in his first game as a Chicago Bear. 3rd and 19. And this time he's going to go down. It's going to be picked off by Mack. Mack with the interception. And Mack will take it all the way in for a touchdown. How crazy was that?
And we are back at it with the Club Dub podcast presented by SportsMockery.com. What's up, guys? It has been quite a long time since we've talked to you. It's been about a month. Bears have made some serious news today. We're going to talk about that. We're missing a guy tonight, Drew. He's on his way back from a business trip. We'll have him around next time. You can follow him on Twitter right now at Drew Cole. He's already made his thoughts known about this, as have both of us. Khalil Mack is a Los Angeles Charger. He's going to go reunite with Brandon Staley. This really just takes the wind out of the Bears' sails for the time being. Erik, what's going on, my man? It's been a couple weeks. Initial thoughts on the trade, and how's everything been going with you?
It's going good, Kev. Staying busy as usual. And, Ryan Poles makes his first big move, as a general manager, and he's certainly not messing around. I completely understand what he's trying to do here. This move to trade Khalil Mack tells me that he doesn't think this team is anywhere close to competing for the playoffs, let alone the Super Bowl. So he wants to get the retooling started right now so he can probably build around Justin Fields and start sort of constructing the roster in his vision. And, Khalil Mack played really well last year, but he did miss 10 games. He's coming off foot surgery. He's getting older. He's 31 years old. The Bears couldn't count on him staying at peak level for much longer because you just don't know with, players like that. So they felt we only have 5 picks. We need more. We need more financial flexibility. He's the highest paid player on the team, and we can get something decent in return for him. So they made the move to send him to a team that has a chance to compete for a Super Bowl. And I wouldn't be surprised if he, behind the scenes pushed for the possibility of, because he probably saw the writing on the wall that this team probably wasn't going to compete for a while. So it wouldn't shock me that maybe he put in a word with management that, hey, if you can trade me to a team that might be able to compete, I'd really appreciate it. And they've obliged him.
Yeah. And this is just right. This is how we normally don't see a lot of big trades in the NFL. We've seen a couple, sometimes with quarterbacks, but with defensive players, it's far and few between. You can really probably count them on a couple of hands. So this is rare to see, for one. And for two, my initial reaction was disappointment. Am I wrong to feel disappointed because the Bears just lost their best player and a guy who kind of epitomized everything we know and love about Chicago Bears style of defense? Am I too disappointed? Because I'm pretty disappointed, man. I don't know.
Look, I totally understand. You're well within your right to feel disappointed because now you know that the defense is probably going to take a step back this year because Mack made them a great defense when he was on the field, and the idea of him and Quinn healthy together on the field, it gave you excitement, and it at least gave you some hope that they might be able to compete, even for a wild card spot. But Poles didn't see it that way. I can understand why. He's got his eye on the big picture here. He wants to build around Justin Fields, but he doesn't have the resources to do that. And the only way to get it is to give up one of your aging veteran players like Mack, who still has some value. And that's what they decided to do. And, I respect the decision. I'm not happy to lose Mack either. I would have liked to him, finish his career here because he's probably going to end up in the Hall of Fame. But, this is the business of the NFL.
Right. I just want to point out one thing, and I thought about this a lot on my walk home today. I thought a lot about yes, this is a great move for the salary cap of the future. The Bears are going to have close to $120 million in 2023. So not this year, but the next year. And the plan was always to build for 2023. It's always been the plan. Bears have a ton of money this year tied up in old contracts. We knew the defense was getting older. This is on paper. This looks like a great move for the future. But you still got to go out and make those picks, for one. You got to hit on those draft picks, and Justin Fields has to be the guy. Do I think he's the guy? Yes. I've seen enough. I think he's the guy, but he has to go out and prove it this year. I love the switch of identities from maybe more of an offensive philosophy. That's great. I'm really happy to see that. But again, this is a huge move to make as your first real big move as GM. I know he signed Jesper Horsted and a couple of other guys to those qualifying contracts for this upcoming season. But this is the first major move before the draft. Got about a month until then. 2 second-round picks now. No, still no first-round pick, which I really thought Mack was worth a first-round pick. I think a lot of people feel that way. 2 second-round picks now. You get the 6th-rounder for next year. My biggest question is, why did they not wait until next season to trade him? You don't have the $24 million dead cap hit. I don't know if that goes up if you trade him after next year. I haven't looked at those details, but you're still paying $24 million against the cap this year in dead cap, and you're not, and maybe waiting for next year after a full season of him, maybe his stock goes up. Maybe he has a Robert Quinn revitalized season, and you can get that first round pick for him next year. Why didn't they wait another year?
Because you can't be guaranteed that. You can't be guaranteed he's going to do what Robert Quinn did. For all we know, he might get injured again because he was hurt in 2020, even though he played most of the games. And then he got hurt last year, missed 10 games. He's going to be 32 next year. You can't be guaranteed anything like that. And it's all about depreciation. If he gets older and he doesn't have that bounce back season, then you're left with somebody who's going to command even less. And Poles said, we're not anywhere closer to competing now. Rip the Band-Aid off now, send him off to a team that he probably wants to play for and has a chance to win a Super Bowl. Let's get as much as we can for him in terms of money and picks and move forward. And, I respect the decision.
I just can't believe they couldn't find more for it. I really thought they could get a first-round pick from it. We talked about it on our previous shows months ago. We had a feeling this was coming. New regime, young quarterback, nothing on offense. Something needed to be done. I can guarantee you the majority of these draft picks are going to be on offense. I know that we've already heard Poles talk about we got to get younger. We got to get lighter. He's an offensive line guy. Guarantee you one of those second-round picks is an offensive lineman. Guaranteed. I'll put my life savings, which is not much, but I'll put that right now that the Bears are going to draft an offensive lineman with one of those second-round picks. The other one, maybe a wide receiver. Let's hope it is. Everybody wants one of those first-round picks, but let's be honest. Like, this wide receiver draft class is huge. Maybe Poles sees more value in those rounds, and if he does, and this is all part of his plan and it works out, that's great. But like I said, you need to hit on these picks now because you just gave up a future Hall of Famer who's only 31. And let's go over the numbers here. Khalil Mack started all 16 games the first 4 years of his NFL career. He comes over in 2018. He missed 3 games, or he didn't start in 3 of those games. So he missed 3 games. 2019, 2020, played in all 16 games. So last year is kind of an outlier for him, only starting 7 games and getting that foot injury. The track record says when he's healthy, he's an animal, and he's that good. So this is where I'm having a hard time in separating, looking at now in the second year of Justin Fields' contract and maybe having a good defense and a weaker NFC conference. I may be looking at that as a confidence boost if they make it into the play. Because right now you're not looking at a playoff berth, even with the expanded playoffs. Mack does mean that much to this team. So I'm looking at it from those angles. I don't want to connect Fields' rookie contract to getting rid of Mack because, again, it's always been about 2023. But I don't think it can be overstated when you're saying 2022, you still want to make the playoffs and boost Fields' confidence and show him that he can do it, especially in a conference that's weaker. Am I wrong to think that?
I mean, Mack's presence would have made the chances of making the playoffs, higher for sure. But I think Poles was taking that, okay, maybe we make the playoffs. We're not winning in the playoffs, even if we do have Mack, because we're just not built to be that kind of team right now. So in his mind, sacrificing Mack in order to help build out the rest of the roster, the short-term sacrifice was worth the long-term gain. And he also had some other things in mind. Travis Gibson, really played well last year. He had 7 sacks. He's a good fit as a defensive end. You still have Robert Quinn, who was excellent. And then you also have to look at the draft. This is supposed to be a very, very good draft for edge rushers, a very good draft for interior pass rushers, which they need. And now all of a sudden you have 3 picks in the second and third rounds, and you should be able to take advantage of that depth and really build out the trenches, which is what, Ryan Poles really wants to do. So in thinking that way, yes, you do need to hit on the picks. That's obvious for every GM, but he wants to build this team through the draft. He made that clear from the moment he stepped up to that podium. We want to build through the draft, and he's making that vision clear by sending Khalil Mack on his way. And, I think this is the correct way to do it. You've got to be able to build through the draft and develop your own guys. And that's why he hired Matt Eberflus, because he believes he's a great teacher and he's able to develop players, which he showed that he can do at Indianapolis. So, sacrificing Mack is going to hurt in the short term. There's just no question. You can't lose a player like that and have it not have a negative effect. But I think they're willing to take the risk that they can build out the rest of the roster with what they lose in a singular player. So,
Miles tuning in. We got Bryson tuning in. There are a couple of guys who really have been longtime listeners. We've been going for about a year now here on the Club Dub podcast, and we are presented by SportsMockery.com. Erik Lambert and Kevin Wells. Missing the third member of our crew tonight, Drew Cole. If you're just tuning in, he'll be with us next time we have a show. He's definitely got thoughts on this too. He really loves the trade. If you follow him on Twitter, he already made his thoughts known. I think love is too strong of a word. I'm not there yet. I really don't love this trade yet. I thought that Khalil Mack was worth a first-round pick. Didn't get it. New era. We're getting there. I will get used to it. I will get used to that.
The Bears probably could have gotten a first-round pick if they were willing to eat more of the contract. I think the contract plays a big part in why they got what they got. Poles wanted to wash his hands of the entire thing. He wanted Los Angeles to take the entire contract so he would have all that cap flexibility next year. So he was viewing it as, I want to wipe the books as clean as possible and just get a couple of decent picks in return. If he had wanted more picks, say like the Denver Broncos did, who paid a nice healthy chunk of Von Miller's contract last year when they sent him to the Los Angeles Rams, they paid off a portion of that contract so they can get a second and a third back. The Bears could have done that, but instead Poles wanted more cap flexibility and free agency in addition to the draft pick. So he just saw it a sort of different way.
Yeah, he wants fast, speedy guys on the offensive line, in the receiving core. There's no question we know the identity of the team he wants to build now. So you know what? I'm going to eat crow. I said this earlier before they went out and got Poles and then got Eberflus. I said, listen, if they don't think Justin is the guy at quarterback, I'm okay with trading him too, as much as it would have made me mad. So you know what? I got to be fair. If they don't think that they're ready to compete now, which clearly I think we can all say that, then if looking at it through that lens, then this was the correct move to make. I still think they should have gotten more. I'm not going to relent on that. I still think they should have gotten more. But got a lot of comments rolling in here, guys. Miles, appreciate you always listening. Happy to see you guys live again. Yeah, we're taking a little bit of a hiatus. Not a lot to talk about. We wanted to make sure we're still fresh here. Sean Montgomery, new listener. I haven't seen you comment before. This is a great point. The offensive rebuild's been 30 years in the making. Let's hope they get this right without having the benefit of an elite defense. Listen, the NFL, you don't need an elite defense to win a Super Bowl anymore. I mean, we've seen it. I know Tampa had a really good one 2 years ago, and I know the Rams had a great defenses last year. It's a huge part of the game. It's half the game. But teams, the thing you need in this league is a damn good offense and a damn good quarterback. Those things outweigh having a good defense. That's just the way the NFL is. That's the way the rule book is written now. I think if this general manager has paid attention in any sort of fashion, and clearly he has, because he helped build a very successful offensive team in Kansas City. Kansas City's defense was left for dead halfway through the year, and then they went out and got a couple guys and rebuilt it, and they played, but they were left for dead. They were one of the worst defenses in the league, but they were still winning football games. And they almost went on to make the Super Bowl. I mean, it's about quarterback play. It's about offensive play. So let's hope that the majority of these draft picks and the majority of this money goes towards the offense. Heck, if we're trading Khalil Mack right now, can we trade Eddie Jackson too? Can we wash our hands clear of a lot of these guys? And then the money will be there for Roquan and Jalen extensions, which I know everybody wants. What's next? Maybe it is an Eddie Jackson trade. Who knows?
I mean, there are a few guys they can trade. Eddie Goldman is, one possibility. I don't know what his value would be. He can still be a good run stopper. It's just a question of what's his commitment to the game, because it looked like he was flirting with retirement at one point before he came back last year. So you just don't know where his head is at. Eddie Jackson, trading him would be possible. It would be tough. The Bears would have to eat another $13 million in dead cap. So that would be another big hit. But at the same time, they would view it as, okay, but we'll get a nice, really big bump in 2023. So it would be another forward-looking thing. But, I think they'll probably want to keep Eddie. He's a little younger. He's not coming off a big injury like Khalil is. And also, he's a good fit for this defense. They like rangy, ball-hawking type safeties, even though his ball-hawking skills have gone on hiatus.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's not exactly the hits principal either, but.
Well, he is for the, for the takeaways part, or at least he's trying to be. But, the hustle, the intensity, you can call that into question. But, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to trade just about anybody who's over 30 at this point, and then just sort of focus on the guys who are sort of in that 23 to 29 range, and just go from there. Get a little bit younger, clear out the books as much as you can, acquire however many draft picks as you can, and then just try to rebuild as quickly as possible.
I mean, listen, we've seen this is the way the NFL works. It's honestly why I think a lot of us are surprised to see trades in the NFL are not as prevalent as in other leagues. We just don't see defensive guys like this on the move. I think that if you're the Bears now, like you said, look at everybody over 30. If teams are calling in contention, I mean, God, look, the AFC West is just, I mean, a nuclear arms race at this point. If Kansas City calls you, they don't need first-round picks for the next little bit. They call you about Robert Quinn. Trade him. If they're gonna break it down that much, and you want to go out and spend your money on offense, a guy like Amari Cooper is going to be available. Christian Kirk, all these guys that we think that could really showcase themselves as a number one, maybe a number two receiver in this offense. Go do it. Go spend that money on those guys. That would be awesome. But I don't know if I even see that yet. I think that like we've been talking about. I think it's the 2023 year that you're going to see the big time signings. You're going to see a team kind of build through the draft this year, see what they have, and kind of fill in from there. We got comments rolling in right now from all across the board. We got fire polls. We'll wait on this one. I'm not happy about it either. Bears fans, you guys are tuning in. I'm not happy about it. Look, every jersey I have now, I don't have a current jersey anymore. Mac was my guy. So looking, David tuning in, they can get a decent return, maybe a third, fourth, sixth, maybe 12. Yeah, I thought I would have been okay with that too. Even if they don't get, first round pick, I would have been okay with a little bit more capital. I think just a second round this year and a sixth round next year just doesn't do it for me. But again, eating the whole contract. Max due what, 90 something $million over the next 3 seasons, 30 over 30 million. 63. Oh, I thought it was more than that. Because there's 31 million next year. It's because it was I gotta look and see what his contract is now. I can't remember off the top of my head, but okay, yeah, due 63 million. So he's only due 63 million, but even so, you look at the future, it makes sense. Got comments rolling in. If Poles doesn't turn down the second rounder, at least it was a solid day one starter. We got to start chanting for his head. Yeah, listen, I tend to agree. This is kind of a bold move to make on your first major move. I don't know. Guess we'll wait and see. But
I mean, the bottom line is Poles has time. I mean, the McCaskies have made that clear. He's the new guy on the block. He's in charge. He's got a 5-year probably contract. So he's taken the long view, and he's not under any urgency to compete for a Super Bowl right now. He will be in a year or two, but right now he's just focused on building his inventory of resources so he can build this roster properly. And a lot of people don't like it. I completely understand why, but that's the approach he's taking. And honestly, I'm in favor of it. I always like a GM who's got at least one eye on the big picture. And it looks like Poles has his eye on the big picture.
So guys, do you love it or hate it? Want some comments? I want more comments in there. We're getting a lot of them today. Jason Gray, guy who always tuning in. A couple new guys as well. Love all those comments rolling. Keep them rolling in. Bryson, thank you as always for tuning in. You love it or hate it? I'm somewhere in the middle. I know that that's a cop-out. I know that that's not the answer you want to hear, and I know this is a debate show, and we like to go back and forth, but I'm right in the middle. I certainly don't love it, and I don't hate it. I got to give it time to percolate and see what happens. But what if here's the other point. So Akeem Hicks is as good as gone. I think you look at Eddie Goldman next as a potential cut candidate. I think he gets cut. And then you look at a guy, you know, I don't know. Look in some of their linebacking core. I mean, who were we talking about earlier this year's cut candidates? Those two specifically. We're also talking about
Probably cut Trevathan after
yeah,
June 1st.
yeah, Trevathan too. Exactly. So I think it's those big three. Then we're looking at compensatory draft picks. No, not for
I think that's something absolutely Poles will be focused on. You know, he said he wants to be selective in free agency. That was a specific word he used. So that tells me he's going to wait in free agency until like the second or even third waves to see if he can pick up some bargains and probably hand out smaller contracts so it doesn't affect the compensatory formula too much, because I think that's what he wants to focus on, you know, stockpiling picks moving forward. And, you know, it all goes back to what he said, build through the draft. And it looks like that's where he's going to, you know, put his focus.
where would those compensatory picks fall for those guys? What years and where do you think they would fall for a guy like Akeem Hicks? Maybe you get a fourth?
It all depends on the type of contract they sign with their next team. So if Hicks signs a pretty solid contract somewhere even close to what he had with the Bears, then yeah, I think a fourth or fifth would probably be the range for what he commands. If Allen Robinson were to sign like one of the contracts he's been seeking, that would be probably a third. I think it comes
For
down
2023, right?
yeah.
Mhm.
So compensatory picks always looks forward
Year
to
after.
the next year. So, you know, depending if the Bears don't spend much money early in free agency and sort of wait it out, you know, they could probably end up with maybe 2 compensatory picks next year, depending on what kind of contracts the guys sign. And then, you know, in 2023, all of a sudden you're looking at 9 picks, and then you can really start thinking about, you know, how you can really retool this roster, especially with the money they've got coming their way.
And I guess that's a great point. I mean, look at how the Chargers made this deal. I don't know how many picks they have in this draft, but I know it's a lot. It might even be in the double digits. So that was why they were able to get rid of a second round pick and not even bat an eye. They also have the most important piece on their roster figured out. They also have the second most important piece on their roster figured out. Now they have Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack as their edge rushers with Justin Herbert, a phenomenal quarterback in this
Or
league.
Russell Wilson.
Oh, dude, I know. Yeah, talk about that. We haven't even gotten to that. We'll talk about the quarterback carousel for a minute here. I mean, do you think this move at all had anything to do with the Aaron Rodgers timeline? I have to think that at least part of it went through Poles' mind. We don't know the details of Aaron Rodgers' deal yet, but you know, reports say 4 years, $200 million. He says just this year, cap friendly. He refuses to come out and say, and there's been no official deal from the Packers account yet. But he's playing in Green Bay next year. Maybe give him 2 more years, then he's 40. Packers are going to be their cap is just exploded for the next decade. I mean, they're screwing themselves if they don't win a Super Bowl in the next 2 years with him.
Missing on Jordan Love was absolutely huge in that regard. You know, not only drafting him in the first round like they did, but trading up to get him. So they gave up 2 picks for a guy who's probably never going to see the field for them outside of backup duty. Mm-hmm. So, you know, that was a huge miss. And now they've been forced to double down on Rodgers by making him the highest paid player in the NFL at $50 million a year. For a guy who's that age, who has already flirted with retirement a couple of times. He's basically morphed into Brett Favre back when Brett Favre was, you know, in the late 2000s when he kept doing that. So, you know, it's amazing how history seems to repeat itself up in Green Bay in that way. But, you know, I don't think the Rodgers thing had anything to do with this decision by Poles, because not even a little bit, because his evaluation of the roster is, look, we're not catching Green Bay this year, even with Khalil Mack. So, you know, what Rodgers does doesn't matter. We got to focus on building our own thing, and then we can start worrying about, you know, what the Packers are doing. Until then, it's all pointless speculation. So I think he's just focused on his own thing right now. And once the team's built to his, you know, specifications, then he can start worrying about how he wants to attack the Packers.
Mm-hmm. Just glancing through the comments right now, we had one. Where did the Chargers pick in the second round? I believe it was
48th.
48th. So the Bears have the 39th and 48th picks in the second round.
Couple of top 50 picks in this draft. That's actually good because there's a lot of depth.
Yeah, and I've heard a couple Bears fans of my mentions on Twitter earlier asking, "Oh, well, they're going to trade those 2 first-round picks to move up." No, they're not. They're not moving up. If anything, they're moving down.
Yeah, I was going to say, you keep one, probably 39, and then use 48 to move down, scoop up some more picks, which I can totally see Poles doing.
So if you had to put money on it right now, where's that first pick going? I know I just said I think it's an offensive lineman. Do you think it's? I think we can narrow it down. I think it's going to be a lineman or a wide receiver. I think they'll keep that 39th pick. You taking a wide receiver there? Or you taking a lineman?
I'm taking a lineman. I think that's it. All depends on how the board falls, because picking offensive linemen outside the first round is always difficult. It's not impossible. I mean, the Chiefs just did it with Creed Humphrey, and he became a stud right away. At center for them. So Poles no doubt believes that he can find quality outside the first round in that regard. So I do believe offensive line will be atop the board. So will wide receiver. If there's a good guard or tackle or somebody there, he's absolutely going to draft them because they need blockers. I think those first 2 picks, both of them in the second round, might end up being in the trenches, one on the offensive side and one on the defensive side, because there's some really good interior pass rush types in this class too. And this defense that Eberflus runs really functions best when you have an interior pass rush presence like DeForest Buckner, like an Aaron Donald, Henry Melton, Tommy Harris, those types of guys. So I think they're going to be on the hunt for somebody like that, which is why it wouldn't surprise me if both second-round picks end up being in the trenches.
Interesting. Yeah, and I could totally see that too. I don't know if they're necessarily believers in Bilal Nichols to play that spot. He's been fine. Just that. Fine, and you need an elite player. That's why the Colts went out and got DeForest Buckner. I mean, they went out and traded, and who knows? That could still be on the market for the Bears next season. I wouldn't expect to see something like that now, but you never know.
Sure.
Looking at this is a good question here. We've got a couple more minutes left here on the Club Dub podcast. We're going to answer as many questions as we can. I know there's a lot of them flying in. Huge news, Dave. Just tuning in. Bears are moving into a rebuild. Ryan Poles has traded Khalil Mack. So big time news. The Bears are now going to shift more of their focus to the future and the offensive side of the football, which is welcome news to a lot of us, but also it still sucks. Khalil Mack was the face of the franchise and a guy who kind of epitomized what we love on defense, and that's really going to suck. I mean, but if you're going this far in, I'd like to see some more trades. I'd like to see some more cuts, and we're going to get to that over the next. It's going to be a busy couple of weeks leading up to the draft. So, Charlie, I wouldn't be surprised to see Montgomery go to a team who needs a running back competing for the playoffs. Listen, running back trades are super rare too. We don't see these often at all. They're also not very valuable. I personally would be on the side of keeping him to make Fields, to keep Fields in the position of succeeding. And Montgomery is still one of the best running backs in the NFL. But somebody offers you higher than a 5th round pick, yeah, you do it. Higher than a 5th. Later than that, probably not for me.
This comes down to the simple fact that the Bears just don't have a lot of weapons on offense right now, which is why I think Poles will end up keeping him, because he's one of the few weapons you have. Him and Herbert can form a good tandem to sort of feed, help Justin Fields with that running game. I do believe in a different situation that he would consider trading Montgomery, because Montgomery does have value. He's one of the better running backs in the league. He's still on a rookie contract, so he's cheap. He's one of those, glue type of guys that you can lean on when you have to. And, I think some teams would see value in that, provided they don't have to give up a really high pick for him. So, if the offer is strong enough, I think Poles would do it, but I don't think anybody's going to make a strong enough offer. To me, it would have to be like a 4th and maybe a later pick to really sort of get any sort of movement. But I don't think anybody's probably going to make that trade unless somebody gets hurt, elsewhere in the league and one of their running backs gets hurt. And it's like, okay, we need somebody proven if we're going to, really make a run at this thing. At that point, maybe you can get something really decent for David.
I mean, it's funny because we look at the Giants too, and they're trying to shop Saquon Barkley, the 2nd overall pick. And how much interest has there been in Saquon Barkley? 0. I know he's got the injury history, but if you put these two on paper, David Montgomery's been a better player. It's just Saquon's got the bigger name. He's probably still got a higher ceiling. I don't even know if I want to say that, but he's got those qualities, but the interest in running backs just isn't there, because you can find guys like Khalil Herbert, whom all of you watching this right now didn't watch a lick of Virginia Tech football, or Virginia Tech, right? I didn't screw that up.
You got
it. I guarantee it. Nobody here watched a lick of Virginia Tech football, and look what Khalil Herbert did in David Montgomery's absence. He was a rock star. You can find running backs anywhere. But again, if there's a team like Pittsburgh Steelers who needed to go, they thought running back was their only position of need last year because their defense is so strong, their receiving core is strong. They went out and used a first-round pick on Najee Harris. That's okay. There's certain types of situations where that will be necessary, but there's no way the Bears get a fourth-round pick for Montgomery and something else. If it's just not going to happen. But if there's a team that wants to do it, I mean, the Bears will definitely be all over that because I think Khalil Herbert could take the reins. Anyway, we got a lot of comments still rolling in. We're going to answer the rest of those in mailbags and things like that. We wanted to get ahead of the news here. Khalil Mack traded to the Los Angeles Chargers. He's going to reunite with his old coach, Brandon Staley. This is a big win for the San Diego Chargers. They probably have the best pass rush in the league now with Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack now lining up alongside each other. Those two healthy. It's an absolute nightmare to deal with. We wish Khalil Mack all the best of luck. 3 years here were far too short. We was hoping that he would, help fuel us to a Super Bowl run in 2018, 2019. We didn't quite get there. Didn't really even get close. Didn't win a playoff game. And, that's just kind of the way things have gone around here. But take a deep breath. Let's think about the future. Let's think about the draft coming up in just over a month away. We'll have plenty of content to get out to everybody about that and who the Bears might be taking and everything. But any final words, Erik, before we get on out of here?
Just all you can do is trust the process. Poles seems to have a plan. He's executing it. And if nothing else, he certainly has no fear in regards to making tough decisions, which is always a critical thing for any GM. So let it play out.
Let's let it play out. This is Kevin Wells. And for Erik Lambert, this is the Club Dub podcast presented by sportsmockery.com. We'll be back again with you next week. We'll have a show kind of once I relax a little bit here. We'll have a little bit more to talk about. We'll have guarantee you more NFL news. We'll talk a little bit more about Aaron Rodgers, the future of the NFC North, all next week on the Club Dub podcast. Until then, you guys have a wonderful weekend. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.